The 2025 Audi SQ6 e-tron is an all-new, all-electric model from Audi, and in this video I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of efficiency you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. And so as far as the SQ6 e-tron, well, this is of course the sportier version of the Q6 e-tron, which also is new for 2025 here, and this is on this new PPE platform from Volkswagen Group, and so Audi gets it and Porsche also gets it and uses it in the new Macan Electric. And so this and the Macan Electric do share a good bit of stuff, but there's also some differences between them, which I'll cover in this video as well. But obviously the styling is completely different, and I think that this looks fantastic, especially up front there. You have those really cool LED DRLs that have a bunch of different configurable settings. You can give it a unique look. Also, just the narrowness of those lights is really mean. You have the tinted actual headlight housings lower there in the front bumper, and I think this is honestly one of the best executions I've seen of the split headlamp kind of design that, you know, many car companies are going with these days. But I think this one nicely hides this. You almost don't realize, and it almost looks like those are the true actual projectors there where the DRLs are. But also on the SQ6 version here, of course, you have the more aggressive front bumper that looks really good as well. Now coming down to the sides here, this one has these 20-inch wheels, and these unfortunately are on these Bridgestone Blizzak winter tires. So, you know, we'll be having an interesting time on a back road here, considering it is a nice warm spring day. But, you know, some nice wheels here. Of course, there's a variety of different wheel options you can choose from. And then also coming down to the sides here, you can see the e-tron badge there in the back door. And then going out to the back end, it is more subdued. And honestly, I wish they would have gone a little more aggressive back there to match the front end better. Because the back end, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, you have a nice tail light bar there like you see on many other vehicles these days. And, you know, a nice back end. Obviously the S models have never been wildly more aggressive, but I just think for the Q6 in general, they could have gone a little bit more aggressive there for the back end, but, you know, still looks really nice. And overall, you know, this vehicle is really cool. I think also, you know, I was expecting this to be slightly larger, and even though it's called the Q6, size wise, it's, you know, fairly similar to a Q5, a really nice popular kind of size, but don't expect this to be anything super large. It is still kind of more in the, you know, compact slash mid-size kind of segment here. But yeah, and this Daytona gray pearl paint, especially the metallic flake here in the sun, really pops too. The interior of the SQ6 e-tron is really interesting. So this is this brand new Audi interior that they just rolled out here recently, and this is my first experience with this new setup with these new screens and everything. And there's a decent amount to talk about here. It's a lot to unpack. But first thing, sitting down in these seats are really cool. So these are the S seats, so they're a little sportier, of course. They do have all the usual adjustments as far as lumbar and all that. They also do have a massage function, but they surprisingly, I don't believe they have any kind of bolstering adjustment, which is interesting. But still, I mean, they have a really good bolster setup already and just really nice seats here. The massage isn't super intense or anything. There's just 3 programs, but it's a nice little massage to have for sure. And the other really cool thing about these seats is that they do have 2 speakers in the headrest for each headrest, and those speakers add to the surround sound experience you get with this B&O Bang & Olufsen stereo here. It's 20 speakers total, 830 watts, and honestly it's one of my favorite parts about this interior, so I'm just going to talk about it first. It is hands down one of the best surround sound experiences I've ever had in a car. And the Audi systems in the Bang & Olufsen were always really well done. I've been so impressed with even like the $5,000 Bang & Olufsen stereo you got in some of the higher end Audis. This is right up there with that, and honestly because of the headrest speakers now, I think even surpasses those. It's really, really stunning, and you can turn down like how much of the, you know, surround effect you want in the headrest if that is a little off-putting to you, because it does kind of change depending on how your head is turning when you're driving. But I love it, and listening to my music this week has been a delight in this thing. It is phenomenal, and yeah, Audi continues to do some of the best stereos in the business in my opinion. Love that. One unfortunate thing though about this seat is that it is not ventilated. I guess you can get ventilated seats in regular Q6s, but whenever you get this quilting, you lose it. I don't know why. Audi does this with a lot of their models where the second quilting is present, all of a sudden perforation goes out the window. I don't know why Audi can't do perforation and quilting in the same seat, because I believe they do that for the highest end stuff, but I don't know why, because I mean, something like this thing's almost $85,000. No excuse to not have ventilated seats. That's just not acceptable in a luxury SUV these days, in my opinion. And also just unfortunate that, you know, going up to the S model downgrades you as far as seat comfort. Moving on there to the steering wheel. This is also a new steering wheel, and it's a really cool wheel with a flat top and a flat bottom, and has a really good 9/3 grip and just a few buttons. I do like how minimal it is, and I love that they've continued to still put the cruise control controls on a stock. That really just unclutters the wheel, and I really enjoy having that little extra stock. I'm glad they stuck with that for this new gen interior. The one thing I don't love, though, is that these capacitive touch buttons, I don't really have a problem with them, except that where my thumb muscles rest, I have found myself this week, especially on the left-hand side here, pressing down on it, and thankfully there's no button to really activate there, but I could see even larger hands potentially, you know, bumping into these other buttons here, and don't love that. And also on the right-hand side here, you could potentially be bumping into the answering or declining a call with that, and, you know, just having buttons extend out into where your thumb muscles are just doesn't seem like a great idea there. So that's the only thing I don't love about it that might annoy some people potentially. It's been a minor annoyance here for me this week, but I could see how that could get on people's nerves potentially. But anyway, moving on to the gauge cluster here. So it's an 11.9-inch display for that display, and it's really nice and high resolution. Has a bunch of different, you know, modes and views and things you can customize there, which is certainly appreciated. But I haven't found a way to do a map view in there, and I'm kind of missing a little bit of the adjustability we got from the old Audi systems. There's, I'm sure, some hidden features and things that are buried that aren't immediately apparent here, but first impression, you know, it's nice, but you know, it takes a little bit of adjustment there. You also do have a new augmented reality head-up display, and that is something that you get here in these upper trims of the SQ6 and Q6 e-trons, but it's really impressive. They say that it's, you know, further out as far as the display, so it allows them to, again, project you know, some guidance on the road for you whenever you're navigating. Now, you do have to use Audi's navigation, I believe, for that. I don't think that works with, you know, the Apple or Google Maps, but, you know, really cool that you have that, and just very high-tech and futuristic feeling. Now, I will say that there were times when the car was trying to give me alerts and warnings that I had to turn off eventually, but it'll sometimes like illuminate like the entire front area there with like a red thing being like, you're following too closely and things like that. So it can be a little overboard. Thankfully, again, you can go in and custom tailor how much you have in that display, but just know that, you know, when you first hop in one of these, it might have everything turned on and it might be a little overboard, but again, you can dial that back. Another cool little kind of head-up display you have here is the fact you have this LED strip that runs the full top of the dashboard here, and that's really cool because that'll display your turn signals and indicate that. It'll also indicate different drive mode things, charging status, all those types of things in there, and just really nice ambient lighting at night too. That's very cool and really a nice creative design touch there. But moving over to the middle of the dashboard here, we have a 14.5-inch OLED touchscreen, and it does wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and it's interesting the way, you know, it's at least a little stylized, so it's not just a generic tablet that's, you know, slapped on. I do like, you know, the attempt to stylize it here, and the software works pretty well. So, you know, it takes some components that you see on some others where you have a constant climate control bar here at the bottom because you have no HVAC controls anymore in any separate area. It's all built into the screen here. And, you know, I do like all the little shortcuts here on the left and the fact that they're ever present even whenever you do have CarPlay running. And all the other menus and stuff are pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use. You know, going through radio stations is nice and easy. And, you know, overall, it's pretty well done. My only complaint with it is it's probably just a glitch with this car, but the radio just didn't work sometimes. And there'd be times where, you know, I'd have to key cycle the vehicle in order for the audio to actually come through. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. I'm sure, again, this is an early production one. There's probably some, you know, little kinks to iron out here. But, you know, other than that, the only other thing I will say is that there were occasional times where it was showing me a loading screen, like especially pulling up vehicle info and stuff. And in 2025 and these brand new high-tech things, there should be no loading. You shouldn't see any loading screen ever, in my opinion at least. And so, you know, that's just not ideal, I think, compared to, again, some of the other super quick stuff that never shows you loading screens, you know, so that's the only complaint. Again, hopefully that's something that can also be improved maybe over the air, because of course this vehicle is eligible to get over the air updates and have everything improve over time. So hopefully that is one thing that does improve. And so overall, yeah, a really nice screen. Now you do also have the option for this passenger display. It's 10.9 inches and that's only on this top Prestige trim. All the other trims don't have that. And, you know, I was kind of skeptical of passenger displays in general, but I will say that my my wife, whenever she was sitting here all week, you know, she's often the one that is controlling the radio and messing with that stuff because I just like focusing on driving. And she actually really liked having that screen, especially since this main screen is angled towards the driver. Having one that's, you know, straight on for her and, you know, able to do everything, that actually was a convenience for her that she actually really did appreciate. And I honestly wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to be kind of a useless gimmick, but she actually really appreciated that. That screen can do a couple of games there. You also can stream video on it. Now it will, I believe, put on some like little digital blinders so that the driver can't see video whenever that's playing in motion. But I was able to see her like changing the radio stuff whenever I was looking over during driving scenarios. So, you know, it's a nice little thing to have though in the Prestige here, I think. And some other screens also, you know, in the past we've complained about glare with some of the passenger displays. This one, there wasn't really too many complaints with that. It has a little bit of a hood over it, and the angle I think is, you know, a little bit more ideal. So pretty well done as far as the passenger display goes. Now, as far as the storage spaces here in the Q6 e-tron, they did an excellent job here on storage space in this thing. So first off, in the doors here, you have a nice large pocket that actually goes pretty far back into the door here. Another odd door thing though, just an interesting choice, they decided to, you know, put the memory seat controls, your mirror controls, headlight controls, all that stuff right here on the door, and that's fine, except oftentimes I'm going up to that area to kind of grab the grab handle. On the passenger side, you have that grab handle, but on the driver's side here, you have to just go down by your window switch area, which is kind of wide. I also don't love, though, that you have this block-off plate up here by the actual door pull. On the passenger side there, that is, you know, for unlocking and locking the doors, but on this, they decided to put it in this capacitive touch thing. And a block-off panel is just, again, not acceptable on an $85,000 car. Finish off the plastic, have a, you know, full width plastic piece there. That just seems like a, you know, a little bit of a, you know, lazy effort there. I wish they would have taken the time to make that one full piece. But aside from that, you know, moving on here, we have the center area, which I'm actually really impressed with. So at first glance, it's honestly really good already. You have two USB-C jacks, a 12-volt power outlet, and this really deep cubby that does have a hidden wireless charging pad. You might not notice it until you actually bend over and you know, check it out here, but it has a little clip on it here to hold your phone in place, and that should do pretty reliable wireless charging, and so certainly a nice touch there. You also see, you know, your volume knob, which is still a nice touch, and your two cup holders, and then you have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. You open that up, and you will see what appears at first glance to just be kind of a usual size center cubby here, but you can see, just because there is the owner's manual here, that this actually goes way far back and goes the full length of, you know, like a typical kind of piece of paper here. And so it actually, you can stuff stuff like under the cup holder area here basically. And a really nice little hidden cubby in a way, and also just, you know, extra bonus storage that you didn't get in a regular Q5 or something. This is some of the perks of having an electric vehicle, is having, you know, these extra spaces, since there is no need for an actual transmission tunnel anymore. So that's really nice. And so, you know, just a lot more storage than you're used to in a traditional Audi, I'd say, and one of the real nice perks of these electric ones. Now, moving on to the back seat here in the Q6 e-tron. It's your average, I'd say, again, about Q5 size back seat space there. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have, you know, a couple inches of legroom to spare there. Not super spacious, but should be fine, you know, for most adults, especially with those cutouts there. But I still would like to see a larger thing yet, because the Q8 does have a little bit more space, but that's on its way out for the Q8 e-tron. You know, we'll see what comes from Audi next, but, you know, just know that this isn't going to be an enormous vehicle, like I kind of mentioned on the outside there, but still should be totally fine. We did have our car seat in the back there, and our kid, you know, had no complaints there with space for her, and my wife actually had no complaints. I thought we'd be more cramped in here than we were, you know, at first glance. So that was a nice surprise as well. And then also you'll see that they have their own air vents back there. Of course, they have their own little climate controls and heated rear seats back there, which is certainly nice. Now, some competitors, maybe not fully electric competitors, but other things in this size class for the luxury segment, some of them do offer ventilated rear seats. I would have liked to see that here on this as well, but we don't have that. But you do have a fold-down center armrest with cup holders built into it, their own pockets in the doors there, and they also have the great view out of this panoramic moonroof here, which is also a standalone option, but also included in these upper trims as well. Moving on to the cargo space here in the Q6 e-tron. So first off, in the back there, you have a pretty typical, again, Q5 size space, I would say, back there. You know, nice and long, nice and wide, and beneath the floor, you do have a very nice deep well there. So you can fit, some extra stuff in there. And so that makes it even more practical than, again, first glance might suggest. You also have little pockets off there in the sides of the cargo area there. But then that's not all, because you do now have a front trunk here in the Q6 e-tron. With this new platform, you get the front trunk, which is great. Now, it's not super huge, but again, it is a little deeper than it might look at first glance. There's the little divider there, which I believe you can remove. Again, something like maybe fit a backpack in there, something extra. It's one of those things, frunks often aren't things you use every day, but if you want to, bring home smelly takeout, something like that, or if you are, really packed to the gills, maybe having that one extra, spot for a backpack or whatever is certainly going to be nice to have. And, I always love extra space, and so the fact they were able to engineer that in here for the Q6 is really nice. And so overall, yeah, a really cool and really nice interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. The new Audi key is a little bit thinner here, and I like that it has the S there on the back, so it's a unique key for the S's, a nice little, thing to make you feel like you're in a more special vehicle. And just, a few buttons there, nice and simple. Of course, you do also have phone as key, so you can have a bunch of stuff with the app and do a bunch more there, but nice to still have a nice regular key fob. But of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, and it does have a push button start, but this vehicle is, one of the kinds like we were familiar with from other electric Volkswagen Group stuff recently, where just sitting down in the vehicle, turns it on, it tries to guess, when you are trying to get in and out of the vehicle and need it on or off. And, putting your foot on the brake also will give it that prompt if, you sitting down isn't enough. But it's still nice to do, to have the start stop button here for when it doesn't perfectly predict, having that right there is great. But anyway, so it's actually already been turned on this whole time. I just have the fans off, but so you just, hop in and it's ready to go. All right, so setting off here in the Audi SQ6 e-tron. So the first thing you notice about it, well, I think the first thing I noticed, it makes a lot of really cool noises here at low speeds, and even people were turning their heads and kind of hearing it, going by, because it does kind of sound very futuristic, very Audi-like, but just a fun little touch. Another thing that I've really appreciated right away is the great visibility you have here in this vehicle. You have a nice large windshield, very thin A-pillars, honestly, for something like this. Nice large side mirrors, great view out of the sides, view out of the back is very good. Surprisingly, we don't have a camera rearview mirror. That's something, for a very high-tech vehicle to not have, I'm a little surprised by. But other than that, great, and as far as 360 cameras and all of that, you have, park assist here is standard. Other things here, so of course, being an EV, you have, a nice responsive throttle. Brakes are actually very well blended, and that is commendable, because there's other luxury brands like Mercedes, their brake pedal is goofy. There's a lot of others where it's not consistent. This has been consistent all week with the braking. I really think they did a phenomenal job with the regen blending here, and so I really like the way that's set up. Now, one thing I don't like about the driving experience, which you'll probably notice immediately or very early on in your drive, is the fact that it tries to do this predictive regen braking whenever you're up and running. Now, the brake pedal always feels consistent, but as far as how much throttle you give it, it's always kind of changing, and unfortunately, there's no way to turn it off. And so there are some times where it's kind of nice, but because again, it's a system that's set up to be very safe, it just meant that when I was following vehicles, I mean, I'm not an aggressive driver, I'm not sitting right on people's bumpers or anything, but it really started slowing down way before I did, and even rolling up to a stop sign, I mean, it was really slowing down early, and so it's just kind of annoying, because the only way to override that is to pull the right paddle and turn it off, and then that turns it off for that amount of driving. But then once you come to a stop, or after a certain amount of time, I'm not sure what the algorithm is, but then it comes back on and continues to insist on trying to maximize your regen with its overly conservative driving. And we'll probably demonstrate that here a little bit whenever we're out on the road. But first, I'm going to go ahead and put up into the dynamic mode here, which is the sportiest mode here for this. And the air suspension lowers itself down. You can kind of feel it, because you do have a standard air suspension here in these, but also turns on the sounds. Now let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. Here we go. Man, it's like it's a kick to the face of the acceleration of this thing. I mean, from a stop, I mean, that wasn't even launch mode, by the way. That's just me stepping on it in dynamic mode. But holy crap, it really it plants you in a shocking fashion. And so, yeah, this thing is fast. It, you know, on paper might not seem insane. We have 509 horsepower is the peak whenever you are in that launch mode or whatever, but whenever you are just doing normal driving, you have 483 horsepower. They don't quote torque figures here for some reason, but they do quote a 4.1 seconds 0 to 60 time, which based on the intensity of that pull sounds conservative to me, but that was nuts. That's the first time I've actually gone full throttle, you know, from a stop there, you know, very rolling, low speed kind of thing. It is, and I also love how it does raise the nose, so it gives you some drama. You know, the dynamic adaptive suspension could be totally stiff and just give you no body movement at all, but I like that there is some body movement built in there, and that adds to that drama, and also kind of communicates what the car is doing. So I do really appreciate that. But yeah, and it ramps up interestingly too, where, you know, from a stop it can, you know, smack you in the back there, but it does kind of increase with its intensity as you go, you know, up in speed, and it's really, really impressive. But other things here, so we are on this road right now that usually generates a decent amount of road noise, and it has been so quiet in here. You do have acoustic front glass here in the Prestige versions, and of course it's an Audi. It's going to be very luxurious and quiet already, and being an electric one, you know, you get some extra sound dampening there just naturally from the battery. But it's been very quiet, and also this air suspension is so smooth, it's soaking up bumps. It's been really nice to kind of glide along in this thing. But anyway, coming up some corners here, let's see how the SQ6 e-tron handles. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we are on Blizzak winter tires for some reason. So I'm not going to be the best judge of handling in this review. I'll just say it right now. There's going to be other reviews where they're on the actual summer tires that you can get on these, or all seasons. But either is going to be a grippier, more dynamic choice than these winter tires, which are probably going to have pretty low limits. But honestly, it works with it very well, though. I thought I'd have more understeer there, and I don't. It's very impressive. Now, one thing that is a differentiator between this and the Macan Electric is that the Macan's the only one that gets rear wheel steering. There's no way to get that here, at least on the S. Maybe we'll see it for an RS version someday or something, but for now, no rear wheel steer. But otherwise, again, does have, you know, the actual rear bias powertrain setup here, where we do have the rear motor doing like basically double the power of the front one, and we do have a different front motor in this than the Macan Electric. That does get punchier and more advanced front motor than this does, but it handles itself really well. I'm going to turn around and go back up the hill and, you know, push it a little bit more, but yeah, you know, handling is nice and flat, very sporty, like you'd want out of an S model. But again, it still does give you that comfort and that duality, which is very much appreciated, because, you know, I think that's been one of the magical things about the S models, is they do give you all the great performance, but they never really sacrificed comfort, and I appreciate that about them, as someone who, you know, likes the power and likes having, you know, some kind of extra, you know, dynamicism on a back road, but I still also, you know, like having comfort be a priority. And so I think Audi does that, I think, better honestly than some others, where some other brands, you have really, when you go to the sporty versions, you compromise on ride quality and it gets overly stiff. I love that Audi has kind of done a nice Goldilocks here. All right, so I have the ESC in its sport mode. I'm going to try and do a launch here. I think it's just left foot brake, right foot gas. Launch control activated. Wow. Well, that's the full power, and it's fun. That's really cool. But honestly, I mean, just stomping on it from a roll is, I think, where you actually get more thrust sometimes, but that was fun, very, very fun. And then also, whenever you want to slow down all this speed, you do have some larger front brakes here on the S version. So you get 6 piston front rotors. They're usually 4 on the regular Q6, and they're 375 millimeter in the front, which is 25 millimeter more than, again, regular Q6. Rears are the same as regular Q6 though, so that's single piston rear, and they're 350 millimeter back there. And yeah, so but yeah, I love how this thing also, it's funny, whenever you're in dynamic mode and you accelerate, the head-up display actually gets larger. So they're adding more of that drama too. I think the sounds are also tasteful. It's not overboard, in my opinion, or weird. You know, I honestly wasn't expecting as much drama and as much effort into the fun component of this. I knew it was going to be fast, but I didn't expect it to be quite as, you know, fun as far as, you know, how they kind of added in these little creative touches here. But Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And so other things here, though, about the handling here. So steering is actually really nice. It's pretty quick. I was kind of surprised. It's a little quicker than I was expecting. That might be something, again, that's courtesy of the co-development with Porsche. I'm not sure. But it's really, again, even in dynamic mode here, it's also nice and light still. They didn't go overboard with steering weight, so that, you know, it feels like it wants to change direction very eagerly and very quickly. And again, just adds to the dynamic feeling of this with, again, not being overboard with that, you know, attempt either. One other nice thing here about the dynamic mode is that it doesn't try and do that predictive efficiency braking. So, I mean, dynamic mode, you might not want to be in all the time, but it's just worth noting that if you do, then you don't have to worry about, again, that predictive braking. So maybe a possible upside here if you're always wanting to drive around in dynamic mode. And honestly, in dynamic mode, though, the suspension still is not that stiff. You feel a little bit more through the road here, but it's really not bad. But anyway, coming up to, again, some more corners here. You know, the one other thing, this is not a light vehicle. These weigh 5,324 pounds for this one here. And obviously, again, the tires are certainly not helping us here today, but it's still, I mean, it's kind of impressive where I'm doing this on winter tires and it has as much grip as it has. Of course, you have the Quattro kind of electric all-wheel driving and just dual motors here with one in the front and one in the rear to really do a good job putting the power down here. I mean, again, turn in nice and sharp and quick. Yeah, it's, you know, carving up this back road, no problem. And, you know, but I do, again, still feel a little bit of lean here. So I think, you know, I love the way they set this up. It could have been totally flat and emotionless, and it's not. And it's really, really well done. I am very impressed with the way they set this up. Well done, Audi. This is really fun, fantastic to drive on a back road and does not feel like some heavy EV or something. Now, as far as the very important battery info here about the SQ6 e-tron. So we're running a 94.4 kilowatt hour battery. That's the usable capacity. It's 100 kilowatt gross. And it's going to do in the S version here a 275 mile range. Now you can go up to like a 321 miles of range for the base rear wheel drive Q6 e-tron, if that's, you know, going to be the max range version there on 18-inch wheels. That's how you get that range rating. And, you know, it's still a performance SUV here. 275 for the mileage, you know, is about what you expect. It looks like observed efficiency is going to be about 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour is what I've been seeing here. Basically over the long term of this vehicle, even, you know, before my time with it here, but also during my drives, it seems like that's about where it likes to land. And so as far as the charging, that is one of the other really great things about this new PPE platform. It's the 800 volt platform. And so that allows them to do a 10% to 80% charge in this at 21 minutes, again, in ideal circumstances and all that, but that's what it's capable of. And that's, you know, really, you know, impressive. It's 270 kilowatt is the DC fast charge rate here in these. And so very, you know, pretty much top notch here these days with just a few other exceptions. But in this segment, you know, that's really about as good as it gets right now here in 2025. So that's very impressive. Also, another nice touch is that you have dual charge ports. So it is CCS still. You're going to need an adapter if you want to use, you know, a Tesla supercharging station. So driver side here is DC fast charging, but the passenger side is only AC, so only for, again, your level 1 or level 2. You know, that's, you know, but it's just nice to have it on both sides just from a convenience factor. And there are power operated doors there too, which is always a fun little touch. There are some competitors that do more range, even with similar kind of horsepower and wheel size, but, you know, I think, again, for the amount of performance this has and all that, that's, you know, about what you can expect. And other things here, so, you know, just cruising behind traffic here whenever we are just in the balance mode, which is the mode I've been in most of the week here. It's just so comfortable, so serene, and again, allows you to just enjoy the you know, awesome stereo and just enjoy the nice smooth ride. But again, I'm just so impressed that they just did such a good job here on this vehicle with the ride quality and just making it nice and comfy. Again, at least with this one just having 20-inch wheels. You can get larger wheels, and then, you know, maybe it'd be a bit more of a challenge. But honestly, even with, you know, some of the RS products with their giant, you know, like 22, 23-inch wheels that I've tested in the past, I mean, Audi does a really good job with suspension tuning to always make sure you have a smooth ride and even, you know, defy, you know, common sense and logic as far as what you would think from large wheels. Even then, it seems like they're still very, you know, comfortable. So you know, I don't think you should be scared about getting larger wheels on these either, because I think, you know, Audi definitely has proven in the past that they do a very good job, you know, again, still maintaining really good comfort no matter what size wheel you're running. But anyway, so getting onto the highway here, as far as all the highway assistance stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff. Now you do get the cruise assist only here on the upper versions of the SQ6 e-tron, but you do get standard adaptive cruise control, you get standard blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. All these things do come standard. So it's just this extra cruise assist that's only in this Prestige version, and I believe the 360 cameras on these upper versions. But you know, we have the adaptive cruise control system on here, the cruise assist. And it's doing the steering assist here really well, being very good with centering in the lane here, not ping-ponging. And this is an improvement, because prior Audis in the past have been more of a corrective kind of lane keep assist system that still kind of defaults to the driver, whereas this one really seems to be basically doing the driving for you here. The other really cool thing to commend Audi for here is that the crash test ratings just came in from the IAHS for the Q6 e-tron and SQ6 by extension, and it's now been awarded the 2025 Top Safety Pick Plus Award, which is actually more of a challenge to get this year, because that also is now focusing on a new moderate overlap test that focuses on rear seat occupant safety, especially for smaller children, making sure that, you know, you have the pre-tensioners, the load limiter, seat belts back there in order to, you know, again, just keep rear seat occupants as safe as front seat occupants, which is something that's been overlooked for a long time. And Audi aced all those tests. It got good across the board. And again, there's companies that really pride themselves on safety that have struggled with that. I think even Volvo had an imperfect score on one of their vehicles in that test. So the fact that, I mean, again, this is a brand new gen vehicle, but the fact that it has aced even the brand new IHS test is very impressive, and shows that this is, again, one of the top safe vehicles in this segment and just in general. I mean, it's a very, very safe vehicle, and that is, you know, a really nice, you know, extra peace of mind there as well. But the last thing to mention here, though, is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing for the SQ6 e-trons here, they start at $74,645. This one, as tested, is just a little over $84,000, again, for this top Prestige version. And, you know, the Prestige is nice, but it really, I think most of the stuff that you want is going to be in the Premium Plus package. That's the package that gives you the fantastic stereo, panoramic roof, the augmented reality head-up display, you know, all the main things, the heated rear seats, heated steering wheel, all those things are, you know, in that Premium Plus package. The Prestige really just, again, adds the front glass, the customizable DRLs, and the OLED taillights. That is only in the Prestige if you want that customization, which is certainly fun. And again, if you're spending this kind of money, you know, maybe just go for the top, you know, trim, and, you know, don't bother trying to save money. But if you are trying to save a little bit of money, you know, it is a nice savings. They're just going for a regular Premium Plus and getting, again, most of that same goodness. And if you are looking for the best deal possible on an SQ6 e-tron or any vehicle, you're definitely going to want to head over to maranmotoring.com. There you'll go to the new car quotes page, and that'll give you access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as connecting you to a local dealer so you can take one of these for a test drive yourself and see what you think about the SQ6 e-tron. So there's going to be a link in the description, as well as one in a pinned comment to take you straight to that site and get you that information if you're interested. Now, as far as how this compares to the competition, so I think, you know, the strongest competitor, it really is going to come down to, you know, how much you value the things that the Audi provides. Some of the competitors don't have a sporty version, and so if, you know, you want sporty handling, then not all the competition can provide that for you. And none of the competitors, I don't think, offer a passenger display other than the Macan Electric. But I think most of the competitors also give you ventilated seats, most of them as standard, I believe. So, you know, there's some trade-offs there. But I think, you know, the best value, if you just want a bunch of power and you don't care about handling that much, is going to be the Genesis Electrified GV70. So that is about $76,000, comparably equipped to this. And again, there's a few things you don't get, like the augmented reality for the head-up display, and, you know, there's certainly some unique things of the Audi. The stereo is better in this, you know, but all the core features and stuff, again, Genesis has similar horsepower, you know, and does, you know, have similar space and all that. And those are $76,000 versus, again, comparable to this, you're looking at, you know, a lot more. Now, if we are talking about stuff that is sporty, there's still a few other bargains to be had. So Cadillac Lyriq is, I think, another one of the very strong competitors. It's actually the best seller in this segment right now. And the Lyriq, you know, with about 500 horsepower set up with just the dual motor all-wheel drive regular Lyriq, again, again, probably not as sporty from a handling standpoint as this, but those are about $78,000, and you know, that's coming in a lot less than this, and again, gives you cooled seats and a very nice interior, lots of metal. I'd actually argue the Lyriq has a nicer interior than this. Also, it's a very impressive stereo, you know, really cool, gives you actually a larger front trunk, and there's some actual nice perks. The Lyriq actually feels a little bit roomier inside as well, you know, the fact that that is, you know, coming in at a nice savings is really impressive. And now they've just started making the new Lyriq V, and the Lyriq V, even fully loaded, is $85,000. So basically same price as this, and that gives you 615 horsepower, gives you magnetic ride control dampers, and you know, all that adaptive stuff. It also gives you Brembo brakes and, you know, actual handling. So very comparable to this, with an extra 115 or 100 horsepower or so, and does it all for the same money, and give you cooled seats, and is, you know, a very, very impressive vehicle. So I think in the sporty electric luxury crossover segment, Lyriq V, I've not driven Lyriq V yet. It might not drive as well as this, I don't know. But just as far as on paper, that seems to be the one to beat in this segment. And I think that that does, you know, outdo this, you know, a little bit there. And I think that's kind of the most appealing one. The other two kind of options, if you do have more money to spend, again, Macan Electric is starting $10,000 more expensive than this for comparable performance. So, you know, that's going to be pricey. And then, of course, the Porsche options list is not a cheap one, and is not a short option list either. So, you know, a lot of options you can add onto those to make those a lot more expensive. So that's going to be, you know, pretty pricey. But, you know, just another one worth mentioning. If you like, you know, all the goodness of the Audi here, but you want even, you know, more performance, or the Porsche Prestige, and you're willing to pay extra for that, you know, that is certainly an option. There's also the Polestar 3, which has its performance version. Those are $93,000. So now we're talking, you know, again, a pretty good gap, same kind of gap as the Porsche, honestly. But the only reason why I bring up the Polestar is the fact that I've seen some pretty good deals on them. They seem to be pretty aggressive with wanting to move those, at least at the time of filming this. Again, depending on, you know, when you're watching this, your deal's going to vary. Deals always vary. But even though that might look like on paper it's $9,000 more expensive than this, the reality, whenever you're leasing one of these or something, is that you may end up coming out at least comparable, or possibly even, you know, less money than this Audi and all the other competitors. And, you know, so again, coming down to the deal you can get, that may also be one worth considering. So don't let the high MSRP put you off. But at the end of the day, even if the Audi isn't the fastest for the money, or maybe even the largest for the money, it is a very nice option, especially if, again, you like kind of the Q5 kind of form factor. You're looking for basically like an electric SQ5, and you're willing to, you know, pay the premium, because this is, you know, commanding a premium over, you know, a regular gas SQ5 or something like that. But you're willing to pay that premium, and again, you like Audi and you like this new direction they're going with the interiors and all that. I do think it's very well done in many ways. Again, a few minor gripes here, you know, a few little things like I mentioned earlier that could be tweaked or improved, but overall, you know, I do really like the SQ6 e-tron. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts on the SQ6 e-tron in the comments below. Huge thanks to Audi for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.